who've refused the jab could be limited to meeting just one person outside their household and barred from non-essential travel.
So is that a move we should be considering introducing here, or is it an infringement on basic human rights?
Joining us now, business owner True Powell, who says locking down the unvaccinated is inhumane. And Professor John Ashton, who is former Regional Director of Public Health, who says greater restrictions should be imposed on those who haven't been jabbed. Very good morning to you both. Professor Ashton, do you think that vaccine passports are enough, and they are being introduced in some places, or what do you think about a lockdown of the unvaccinated, as Austria have done?
I fear that it might come to that, but, you know, we all need to be playing our part, and at the moment, it's as though the thing's over, and we really need to get back to wearing masks, social distancing, and yes, passports. But you know, this is not about civil rights. It's about winning the battle with this virus, and not throwing in the towel, which is what seems to be being advocated by some of the business community.
And what do you think of what the Germans are considering, Professor Ashton? Does it make sense to start having tougher restrictions on people who've not been vaccinated?
You know, we shouldn't be in this position. We should have been vaccinating the school children before the summer holidays.
But given the position we're in, though, but right now, given we are in that position, what do you think about what the Germans are doing?
I think that we may well come to that, but what I was about to say, Ed, is that we really should be getting all of our secondary school kids with second vaccines before Christmas. We should be beginning to vaccinate the primary school children. There are still millions of people who are not double vaccinated in the UK, and that's the real problem, because the virus is still circulating. And while the virus is circulating, there's the potential for more mutations.
True Powell, when you see a country like Austria introduce a lockdown for the unvaccinated, and you see Germany start to consider tightening restrictions on those who haven't been unvaccinated, do you think that is something that is potentially making its way to the UK? And if it did, how would you react?
Morning, both. This is really exhausting, and I think it's a disgrace that Germany are doing this. We should not be dictating to people that they need to have their vaccination, otherwise they're going to be locked down in their homes. I think it's an encroachment on civil rights and human rights. I think everybody has the right to decide what goes into their bodies, and it's really exhausting that we're back here again discussing COVID. We know that it's here, we know that it's a huge problem, but people are being discriminated against. People are losing their jobs because they haven't had the vaccination.
But True, nobody's saying that anybody's going to be forced to be vaccinated. They're just saying if you're not vaccinated, and therefore you're more at risk, you can't go and stand at a football stadium or go into a big crowded pub. That's the question. I mean, whose civil rights are we protecting here?
Well, the discussion is for the unvaccinated, will lockdown be, I guess, given to the unvaccinated? And for me, that's almost like putting somebody in prison because of not being vaccinated. I mean, there's a huge problem, and it's hugely problematic. There are some communities out there who are justified in their thinking as to why they may be hesitant to vaccinations, and those communities will be discriminated against. Yes, COVID is here. Yes, it's a huge problem, but I do not think that enforcing lockdowns to those who are unvaccinated is the right way to go.
So in Germany, they could introduce lockdown curbs on those who haven't been vaccinated within days. Those who refuse the jab could be limited to meeting just one person from outside their household and barred from non-essential travel as soon as Friday. This is in one particular region, and it's because a threshold of more than 1,300 hospital beds in the region are occupied by COVID patients. Professor Ashton, is this protecting those who haven't been vaccinated, or is it punishing them for not being vaccinated?
I think the primary consideration is protection of the greater number of the population. You know, your freedom ends where my nose begins. And it's not a matter of freedom if people won't have their vaccine. It's a question of whether they're exercising social responsibility towards their neighbours and their other family members. That's the issue here. It's not about freedom, it's about responsibilities. And we need to hear more about responsibility towards each other if we're not going to face the same problems that we had last Christmas. It's less than 6 weeks now till Christmas, and things are heading in the wrong direction. There's an assumption being made by government that the NHS has come through this okay, but it hasn't actually. There are exhausted staff in our National Health Service across the country. There's staff with post-traumatic stress, there's staff who are off sick, and there's a huge backup of patients who haven't been treated and patients who will die because they haven't had their cancer treatment because of COVID. The NHS is in peril, and we have to take action to make sure that it's protected. And that action means each of us needs to do what we have a responsibility to do.
So, True Powell, this isn't about the freedom of the individual. This is about your responsibility towards the whole community.
You know, Susan, I think it's ironic that we've even mentioned the NHS, because some of the NHS staff who have served on the front line throughout this whole pandemic are actually facing dismissal because of not being vaccinated. So I think that's really ironic in the first instance. And secondly, we can exercise social responsibility through wearing masks, through the distancing rule. I just don't believe that those who are unvaccinated should be forced to stay indoors and maybe only see one other person and be restricted of travelling on public transport because they've refused the vaccination, or they might just be hesitant about the vaccination. I think we need to exercise human rights and civil rights. That is the point here.